guys, and welcome. I took a break for a few months and I'm back with a vengeance. Oh, just kidding. So, for this video, we're going to talk about the balance between defense and attack, how that works, and my thoughts on how to get better defending in Guild Wars. I will also be discussing my future plans for my account and future videos that you might expect. So let's start with the balance between defense and attack. So defense and attack is pretty simple actually. Attack is how much damage you dish out, and defense is how much damage is reduced. To illustrate this, although it's a pretty simple concept, it's better that I illustrate it. Let's set an example. Let's use Orlando and Agrias as our point of reference. So attack is a raw number that you build through your stats and multipliers. So for example, you have Orlando get to dish out a raw damage of 4,000 slash damage against Agrias. So that's the attack part. Agrias, being an amazing tank as she is, has an overall damage mitigation of 70%. So what is damage mitigation? What am I talking about? Damage mitigation is like the end product of all the defensive stats pulled together. It's a percentage. How it works is that Orlando's damage would be 4,000, right? And only 30% of that will get to Agrias because of the 70% damage mitigation. So his damage would be something like 1,200 only, which is 30% of 4,000, the raw amount. So yeah, she will receive 1,200, simple as that. An additional scenario would be Agrias has a barrier buff on which further halves Orlando's damage. So now Agrias will receive 600 damage instead of 1,200. Yeah. There are many factors that can affect the scenario, and I will be discussing them. But first, I want you guys to remember that 1 damage whisper build against Slash with the 95 slash resist. The reason it was 1 because the build actually reached 100% damage mitigation against Slash. Slash resist plus the defense value, it's 95, right? So it's not 100%, but with the defense value from Whisper's equipment, it can reach 100. It's technically 100% damage resistance to Slash, except that it's instead of 0, it's reflected as 1. That's one way to explain it. So again, there are many factors that can affect this, and I will be going back and forth to this example so that you can get a clear idea as I go through this video. So, what makes up the 4,000 attack raw number, and what makes up that 70% damage mitigation? For the damage part, I won't be going into detail. I am sure there are Reddit posts and other YouTube videos that talk about how that number is built. I will be focusing more on defense because it's less talked about. For defense, there are 3 things to consider, or 3 layers as I call it. The first layer is the raw defense or spirit. It's the one that you actually see on your character detail screen right here. These 2 form the base of your character's defensive ability. You can build this through your ability board by unlocking certain panels and certain skills, equipping certain espers, vision cards, and equipment. It's pretty straightforward, just stack up your def and SPR. The second layer is resistance. So resistance is something that your character naturally comes with. You can see it also on the stats details of your character panel. And same with Def or SPR, you can build this through your ability board, Esper's vision cards, and equipment. And the last layer is the buffs or the barriers. I have a question for you guys though. Out of these three, which do you think is the most important? Have a think. And I'll answer it at the end of this video. So for example, just to go back to the example so you can get a better picture of these layers. Agrias, as you can see in this image, has 60 def. That automatically translates to 60% damage reduced. That's how it is. Like every def point is 1% damage mitigation. Let's say she also has 10% slash stress for simplicity's sake. Both added together makes up 70. These values just stacks and compounds to make the damage mitigation percentage. But a simple note though about resistances. 1 point of resistance, let's say if you have, let's say 10 resistance, you don't really get 10. 1 point of resistance is actually 0.85. Like 1%, you have to multiply 10 to 0.85 because I don't know why they don't give the full point of the resistance. You just get like partial of it. I have a video that explains this. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see the experiments I made about it. So for example, yeah, so that's the simple part where the def and the resistance just stacks together. So now let's talk about the tricky part. The tricky part, there are already a lot of counters in place against each defensive layer. For defense and SPR, we already have def piercing and SPR piercing in some characters, and in future characters there will be more, a lot of those or more of those, like those one punch things. And we also have def down. So def down essentially lowers your def. At max value at level 20, Orlando's crush armor decreases the value of def by 25 in I think in 3 rounds, I'm not sure. So if your def value is 50, or in this case in the image is 60, which is already 50 is already high considering, and very expensive to create, then after def down it will be 25 at least for 3 turns. Def piercing, on the other hand, is when the attack ignores a portion of your defense. I think I read on a Reddit post, or I saw on a website that Lucia's ignore def or def piercing is maxed at 40%. So if your def is 50, Lucia ignores like 20 of it. Is that right? Is my math right? I think it's right. So your def is reduced to 30.
Just to give you an example, here's Orlando and Agrias. So in this video, you can see that Agrias's def is 65, and Orlando does crush armor, which it reduces the def to 40. So it reduces the defense by 25. The next part is we're gonna figure out if the def down stacks. So we do it again. So you can see it's 40. We do another crush armor, and then once we check Agrias's stats again, it's still 40. So yeah. In this video, I will try to show you how def piercing works. So here we have Ffbe removed her def passive and equipped her with this card with -5 defense down in order to simulate 0 defense on her, so you can see the difference. So here they are. Glaciella going to attack Ffbe with 1280 damage at 3 defense. This is without defense piercing, so what we're going to do next is to apply Glaciella's defense piercing buff. So here comes the buff, and I'll skip ahead to her next turn and see the damage of 1602 on Ffbe. So that's her damage at a Ffbe with 3 defense. So Glaciella does an initial damage of 1280, then 1602 after the buff, giving her a 25% damage increase. Now what is this 25%? This is not the def piercing, because remember, Ffbe has no def. This 25% increase in damage is actually an increase in her pierce attack, which the buff also gives. We need to get that out of the way to figure out how much def piercing actually is given by her buff. Now let's look at the video where Ffbe has all of her def back. So in this video, Ffbe got her full 20 def back. So this is a different Glaciella. She does 1055 damage on Ffbe. And now we're gonna buff her def piercing buff and see the difference between the two. Skipping ahead to Glaciella's next turn, we could see her damage here is 1471. If you calculate that, the damage increase with 20 def is actually 39%, or if you round up, is 40% damage increase. Remember, with 0 def, you only get 25, but with def, you get 40. My logic dictates that the additional 50% actually comes from def piercing. So we can surmise that Glaciella does 15% more damage if someone has defense. So it only works if the target unit has defense on it.
So that's def down and def piercing. In the future, the game will be releasing more units with def piercing and SPR piercing attacks, which makes defense and SPR less reliable as it's easily countered by future units. So what about resistance? So let's talk about that. So what is resistances? So resistance is, as I've said, another layer of defense with your character. And resistance actually can be broken down into 3 more sub-layers: attack type resistance, elemental resistance, and special resistances. So attack type resistance is very straightforward. You can see it in your character panel stat details. And elemental resistance is also the same. You can see it in the stat details, but mostly it's depends on what element your character is and what element of Esper you equip. While special resistance is different. You have 2, mainly the unit attack resistance and AoE attack resistance. For attack type resistance and elemental resistance, I won't be going into detail
because it's pretty simple. If you have a high slash resistance, you get less damage from slash. If you have low pierce resistance, you get more damage from pierce. Same with elemental. So if you have an ice defense unit and you get attacked by a fire unit, which usually ice units are weak to, you receive or get more damage. Pretty simple concept. I will be focusing more on unit and area of attack resistances. The unit attack resistance means single target resistance. Any type of attack, any element of attack, it resists it or mitigates the damage. As an example, I want to make the holy skill as a point of comparison. So Ffbe's holy skill, or the white mage's holy skill, is actually a unit type resistance. Later I will show you what the AoE type holy looks like. AoE type resistance is a resistance that negates damage on any attack that is area, like panel based, or like affects a wide range or wide area. As I've shown earlier, almost all of the calculator skills are AoE based, like holy and Cura, and also most limit breaks on all characters are AoE attacks. So those are the two types. It doesn't matter what attack type or element it is. It just depends if it's single target or area based. Out of the three, attack type resistance always have counters already, like pierce resistance down or slash resistance down, and you also have like fire resistance down, ice resistance down. But so far we have, less, or even I haven't seen any yet of unit attack resistance down or AoE. If there is, it's pretty few, so it's one of the more reliable def components than compared to the others. So this will play a part in what kind of vision cards I will be choosing later on. In conclusion, I would say resistances are not as reliable, but special resistances such as unit and a wide area range resistances are still reliable as of now. And now that we've nailed that down, let's move on to barriers. So barriers is a buff, and it's one of the most important for me that your tank should have, because barriers instantly cuts the enemy's damage in half, but it only lasts like 3 hits. So if you get hit by any enemy 3 times, the barrier disappears. So that's the only problem with barriers. And you will also have in the future barrier removing or buff removing units such as Nivlu and Auron, but we also have little Lila, her limit break, that removes that buff. But so far I still think barrier is still a reliable defense component out of all of it, because not everyone runs with little Lila at the moment, or can ensure that she's gonna use a limit break at the start of the fight. So it's still a good chunk of, or a good component. So that concludes my discussion about the layers of defense. And I am now going to conclude my thoughts on defense in general. So, in conclusion, my tips or points would be: number one, invest on unit attack resistance and area attack resistance cards, like the Odin, Blood Moon, and Death Machine, and also that the new Winter Eldira card is a good one. And there are many more upcoming cards with area and unit resistance. I think Church's Spy is one of the good ones that you might want to take a look at. My second advice would be to invest in Cecil, because Cecil is, number one, free, and also he's a good defense unit alongside with Whisper. I'm still experimenting on him. Whisper doesn't have barriers, although she has high resistance. She doesn't have death and barriers on her, so their pairing gives Whisper the buff that she doesn't have. So that's my 2 cents. And also, it's very expensive for squishy healer units such as Ildira and Ayaka to beef up their death. And one of the good ways where you don't have to sacrifice other stats such as mag and accuracy for death would be just to slap on a barrier from Cecil. So he has very high utility in terms of being a support, so please don't sleep on him. He's very useful. And yeah, in the future there will be a lot of units with SPR piercing and death piercing, and it would be very difficult to tank all of those. So when I mean defending, I meant defending for Guild Wars, because when we talk about arena, it's easy to build a tank against an enemy you already know about. But in Guild Wars defense, you don't know who gets to attack you, and so the goal here, for me at least, is to build a well-rounded team that can last 4 or more matches. Well, that's the goal. That's why I'm discussing this. And I think the route to that is building unit resistances, AoE resistances, and depending on barriers. Because right now, there's no way to mitigate death and SPR piercing. That's my 2 cents. And the way I can go about that is with Whisper and Cecil currently, which I am exploring. And going forward with this account, I might be only investing in Nivlu and maybe one other tank, maybe Tidus, because to be honest, the future tanks in my head, like Tidus, Lardu, they're just the same brand of tanks with death piercing and more offensive power. Usually, like, tanks we have now focus on support slash tanking. They don't have much offense. They do have status ailments for supporting, but other than that, I don't think there's not. Well, there's Agrias, she can do a lot, but other than her, it's pretty much mediocre damage. So yeah, it's the future tanks are more like tank plus more offensive, and I don't need more than one of those. What I will be investing on is getting Nivlu. I feel like she has the most bang for my buck, kind of a good sniper with removal of buffs. That's what I like, since
a lot of the tanks here would be depending on that buff, and yeah, she's what I want currently. Besides Nivlu, I might be going to invest on Sakura. Maybe, I'm just thinking about it, or there might be, you know, some other unit that comes out that I don't expect. I won't be pulling for anyone else at the moment, and yeah, saving up for me. And that's all, I guess. Oh, videos. So for videos, I'm going to finish my hit rate video soon, and maybe I'm thinking of showing my tank comparison, my thoughts on each and every tank. That's all for my video, guys. Thanks for watching, and ciao, see you next time, hopefully. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe, okay?